in the last 10 years. From having a car with no sponsors, from having Fernando Alonso publicly chastise the team, from having multiple engine issues and multiple engine suppliers, to a change in technical structure, to reinvestment in the team with them almost going bankrupt. Within 10 years, McLaren went from the bottom and now are constructors world champions. There cannot be a bigger story than that, Kunal.
Well, there isn't a bigger story than that. And the way they've done it is what sort of stands out. If we go back literally, 40 races ago, and remember, 40 races is not a lot of time in Formula One, it's less than two full seasons. At the start of last year, they were really out of sorts. They brought the upgrade mid season in Austria, and they continued bringing upgrades all the way throughout. But that Austria upgrade last year and the Miami upgrade this year has brought them into so much contention that eventually has given them this constructors championship win after 25, 26 years, if my number is right. And Andrea Stella, you showed the math of Alonso and then the victory that we are seeing today. Andrea Stella actually joined McLaren back in that time. Okay.
Yeah.
Andrea Stella, there we go. He came from Ferrari. He was Fernando Alonso's race engineer. I think he was the one whom his race engineer when Alonso lost the 2010 Drivers' Championship. Stella has, of course, gone to McLaren, slowest team, slowest car, no engine, and one by one, when he was given the team principal mandate a couple of seasons ago, he put his pieces together, and that has resulted in a beautiful World Championship win for McLaren. And I also think for Formula One to not see a Red Bull or a Mercedes take win, because that's what Red Bull and Mercedes have been doing since 14 years now.
Yeah, isn't that the number, Sundaram? 14 years of dominance, now finally broken. And we've been crying for McLaren versus Ferrari. Now that it's happened, I don't think we're appreciating the moment enough.
Of course, it's been 14 years since any other team apart from a Red Bull and a Mercedes has won the constructors title, or any title for that matter. And yesterday, when they finally won the title, it was not a case of the result, which is eventually the constructors title, but the journey, like we've just discussed. And for each of them, I think Lando, Oscar, Zach, and Andrea Stella, they've all come through some very different journeys and some very low lows. And it's ultimately a case of so much of loyalty and belief, because we've said 26 years since their last title. You know how much McLaren has gone through then. 2005, they arguably had the quickest car on the grid, and they had the quickest driver in that cockpit as well, Kimi Raikkonen. He was supposed to win that title, but due to reliability issues, they lost a hold on the championship. 2007, we don't need to really go there. Fernando Alonso, Hamilton, one of the most bitter rivalries between teammates. There was also the espionage scandal. There was also they got disqualified. They got disqualified from the championship. They had 100 million fine on them, and literally, it's a very shameful period for McLaren at that point. And 2015, they moved to Honda. They had they finished ninth that year. 2017, they finished ninth that year. I came out with a stat saying that Lewis Hamilton has had only 14 DNFs during his 12 years with Mercedes. McLaren had 16 DNFs in 2017 alone. And when Lando Norris came into that team, there was no belief, or there was no proof that they could win a title. When Oscar Piastri came from Alpine, and like Kunal said, the first couple of races last year, it felt like he had made the wrong decision. But then everything just came together over these last 40 races, and all of them, and the hundreds and thousands of people that have worked behind the scenes, it's all worked together, and it's been a very, very long journey for them.
And Lando Norris actually rejected Red Bull Racing's offer to
Yeah.
join them. He was meant to be Max Verstappen's teammate. Helmut Marko revealed this to us on the Inside Line F1 podcast itself. And he said, we offered a contract to Norris, eventually didn't go through. And Norris then went on to the media and said, I want to win a championship with McLaren. This came from a driver who at that point only had a couple of podiums, one pole position, no race wins. And we were all saying, what? Why? What's the project looking like? We're so far away. Go to a team that can win and win it. But he stuck around. And that patience, that love, that loyalty, that support, it's resulting in something so beautiful. And also Zach Brown, Kunal, when he walked in, the bullish American CEO type, not really a proper technical person, someone more on the commercial side, the way he's transformed McLaren. I mean, this photo, right, of Fernando Alonso stepping out of his 2017 McLaren, look at how empty and dry that car looks. Today, the McLaren car is filled with sponsors even on the rims.
Yeah, absolutely. The famous Google Chrome, wheel rims that they've got, and credit has to be given where it's due. Zach Brown did all the building, the restructuring. He is where the buck stops in McLaren. He elevated Andrea Stella to the team, technical director role after James Key left, and they don't have a headline designer, as most people would remember, Adrian Newey, Red Bull Racing. He has beaten, and when I say he, I mean Zach Brown led, Andrea Stella led, McLaren have beaten Adrian Newey in this ground effect era of Formula One. And yes, Checo Perez hasn't scored. Red Bull has had their issues internal with the car, etc., etc. But to beat Adrian Newey, because when you beat the constructors, you're beating the team. You're not beating a driver. Okay. We will celebrate Norris a little more or Oscar Piastri a little more should they end up beating Max Verstappen next year. Mind you, Lando Norris has put himself out there publicly after winning the race. Next year is mine. Next year's target is to win the constructors and the drivers. So he's put on that pressure on him already through the off season, and I think that's fantastic. When you have a bit of pressure, when you have a bit of ambition and direction, you wake up every day wanting to chase it. But hats off to McLaren for pulling it off. They needed a perfect race result. They almost had it till Max Verstappen spun Oscar Piastri. Questions should be asked with that car they had. Should the battle have even gone down to the wire? Should they have wrapped it up a couple of races ago? And this is where I know, Sundaram, one of your most stolen stat is what we should pull out, which is where Sundaram actually split the entire season into 4 quarters, right? I mean, if it's a quarter, it's 4 times, but he's put it in 4 quarters, and only to show which team has actually scored the most in each quarter. And McLaren have done the highest, most consistent scoring across all quarters, I would say. But crucially, they won it in the middle 2 quarters from race 7, from Imola till race 18, Singapore, when they outscored everyone else drastically, I would say.
That's where they lost it. That's where Ferrari lost it. That one upgrade. That is where the entire ball game changed for them. That if that Spanish GP upgrade would have worked, we would have been here celebrating a Ferrari win. And I don't know, we would have all been in red, popping those party balloons or whatever it might be. We would all be drunk as hell. We would record this episode because it's Ferrari winning a championship. But that one upgrade has
I
changed
thought you'll
everything.
say we'll all sit here with a pizza celebrating Ferrari since it's an Italian team win with a wine or something, but okay.
No, it would be a Monday morning, right? So the after effects of all the wine would mean that we'd probably be lying on our bed flat. So we wouldn't know much of what's going on. But it's a testament to the budget cap, Sundaram, I'd say, that upgrades, every single one of them matters. Correlation matters. Success is not a guarantee. Wind tunnel time is also decreasing. And nobody knows if McLaren can hold on to it next year because of how well these regulations have put things up now for Formula One.
I absolutely love it that you brought the budget cap, because a lot of it really depends on that. Because this is now 2005 or the early 2000s, where Ferrari was literally dumping in millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, doing a lot of testing at the Fiorano track. They literally had a whole roster of reserve drivers or test drivers who would try and improve that car weekend every single week. And it's impressive to see that now everyone has to work just with very small budgets, and they are able to use all those resources as well. I mean, you've seen how much Williams have had to struggle with spare parts and budget as well. So it's almost a level playing field. And it takes me back to 2014 when Ron Dennis mentioned that the reason they moved from McLaren Mercedes to McLaren Honda is because that a works team, sorry, a customer team will not be able to win in the current engine regulations. And diving deeper into that, what he basically meant is the team needs to be given the priority to be able to have the engine kind of developed or built around the chassis, around what their aero philosophy is. And when you're a works team, that's usually the sort of priority you will get. And that's one of the reasons why they moved to McLaren Honda, and we know how that partnership ended. But then it's ironic that they came back to McLaren Mercedes, and it's that very team that kind of beat that notion that you can win with a customer team. And McLaren is now the first customer team since Red Bull Renault in 2011 to win the
Wow.
constructors title.
Oh wait, one second. Not 2013 because that would have been also Red Bull Renault, right?
I think that was they had already moved to Lotus by then. So 2011 was the last time, if I
Oh
remember, Renault
yeah,
was
you're
on the
right.
grid.
They were the. But would that be a proper works team then if Renault were the suppliers and Red Bull were the share? But I get your point because they were the sole people supplying the engines, right? That way.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'd say we need to say congratulations to Formula One, Kunal, for this result because 14 years of dominance has finally come to an end, and it can show that it basically shows that with the right setup and with the right operations, anyone can win. And this could very well have been a Ferrari World Championship.
It could, and my mind goes back to two things. When Carlos Sainz and Checo Perez had their crash in Baku, it could have changed the trajectory of the World Championship. But even more, I think this season, and I have now so many thoughts that I got to say it slowly. This season was defined by those fine margins. It was that one race result that cost you a big position in the championship. Or it was that one upgrade that didn't fire, or one safety car that didn't work out your way, or a yellow flag that came out at the wrong time. When you sit back and like, oh, it was just that race, or it was just that result. And I think, but largely Ferrari lost this championship between Monaco and Monza. Okay, they had such a bad run of results between the highest and the lowest downforce of circuits, that everything else in the middle was completely haywire, which is where you also rightly mentioned about the Spanish GP upgrade and various things. And to me, yes, we would have been celebrating a Ferrari win, but they haven't won. And I Charles Leclerc was so upset despite driving one of the most incredible recovery drives we've ever seen in a Ferrari do it. Let me tell you, we've seen recovery drives in Red Bull, we've seen recovery drives in Mercedes, but I can't remember when last we saw a recovery drive in a Ferrari. Okay, despite them being who they are, to see that recovery drive, I think was fantastic. So to me, I really hope it's not a 2025 Formula One season, but more a 2024 version 2, because we need this momentum to continue before we hit reset in 2026. We need such unpredictability to be there. We need such awesome competition to be there throughout. I think even the off season. Can we just have a few races in the off season, given everyone's literally going to end up missing Formula One from next Sunday?
Like a rookie sprint race, you mean?
There are postseason tests, but no prizes, no broadcast of the postseason test apart from some driver interviews you'll get to hear on social media. But what a bloody win! I mean, McLaren and Ferrari gunning for it. Ferrari needed two cars on the podium. They got two cars on the podium. And just the culmination of all of it. Pierre Gasly needed to get a score ahead of Nico Hulkenberg, but hey, Nico Hulkenberg put it in fourth place. Again, finer margins decided that P6 in the championship. And I think it was just one of those, such an incredible race. Everyone was getting emotional. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I love that picture of Nico Hulkenberg. It's the good old, suit on the parts of his face where, the balaclava doesn't cover him. It's wonderful, right? It's just the good old way of how we remember Formula One to be. But wow, I don't know how we're going to handle the off season, guys. Maybe we just need to have
Yeah.
an offline meet with all our listeners and followers and viewers early in January to start celebrating 2025 already and build up the anticipation.
Celebrating this year is a very good point because, guys, before we move to Lewis Hamilton, we need to touch base upon what we, as the Inside Line F1 podcast, have achieved in the last year. I mean, one of our key goals, and we rarely share it this, right? We rarely talk about why we're doing this or what we are in this for. Kunal was already in the sport when we all joined the podcast. I joined in 2020, Sundaram in 2021. our goal was just to be like him in a way, right? To try to get to work in Formula One, make a living off it, make it your passion, make it your life. And for the first time, we can very proudly say, and I look at the grin at on Kunal's face, and I feel so happy about it. We all have worked on Formula One this year, all three of us. It's I. There were times where all of us were on TV on the same weekend. Sundaram and I with the Indian Racing League, Kunal on the Formula One broadcasts in Norway. And then in the last race of the season, Sundaram, do you want to share the news about who has sent you an email or what's going on there? Or,
No one sent me an email as yet. But that's the thing. So last year, we all made our debuts on live broadcast in the same season. I'm sure you guys have already done it before me, but then I was also there on live broadcast on live television last year. That was one milestone for us in 2023. But this year, all of us have worked in Formula One. All of us have been on the live broadcast together in some championship or the other. So yeah, step by step you're there, and I'm
You,
sure
you,
2025 is going to be even bigger.
you know, the joy of working with you jokers, and I'm saying jokers now for a reason, is because y'all are being very modest and humble. I have to put it out there myself. So firstly, when Sudaram and Somil joined forces with me on the inside line, the plan was, wow, you guys are doing great in your fields, whether it's Somil, which is wonderful commentary, whether it's Sundaram with his stats, which
I wasn't doing
by
stats. I
you
was
weren't
just
doing
winning quiz.
but
you were the lowest of the quizzes, by the way.
and then I said, can we just get together, put some momentum in what's happening? Because the larger world, the world at large, the audiences need to see your work, not just limited parts of, where you sort of end up projecting your work. And that was the mission. So it gives me a lot of joy. And I'll tell you why I called you all jokers. I haven't backed that up. So Somil was the voice of Formula One in India in Hindi on Fan Code, the official broadcaster for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So he has now directly lent his voice to an official broadcast of Formula One. And I think, Samuel, you deserve a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as for Sundaram, he has had two stats which have gone on to become the most stolen stats over the weekend of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. First one we just put up, it's 24 races, split six races, into four quarters, and that's how it's come. The other stat is the one which you're probably seeing with his name and number and whatever all removed because it's so easy to crop. Because I can't reveal more about Sundaram, but we should go and look into that stat, that the coincidence between 2012 and 2024 that you found Sundaram. Why don't you just lay it on us so people respect me a little more for calling you a joker on the broadcast?
Yeah, so this was basically so last night I decided that I will find all my stats and head to bed by 1 o'clock so I can wake up and do my work today. But then something just reminded me that, hey, this is Lewis's last race with Mercedes. Let's kind of look and see if there are any parallels that I can draw between his last race with McLaren. And I realized that Jenson Button, a British McLaren driver, had won the race. Fernando
Mm.
Alonso, a Spaniard in a Ferrari, won. This time it was Carlos Sainz. And then the other Ferrari finished the podium. So back then it was Massa, and this time it was Charles Leclerc. And then it kind of dawned on me that the Red Bull multiple time world champion spun in both races on the opening lap after coming together with some other driver, and they made a big recovery drive exactly to P6. And one driver in specific retired from both races on the opening lap, Checo Perez. And I didn't think much about this stat.
What?
I didn't think much about this stat, but supposedly it's done millions of views already. A lot of people have been messaging me, and I've had a couple of, I would say, fairly prominent people follow me as well on social media. So yeah, the sort of stats that
You
I
got to
think,
name one
You
person.
gotta
Come
name
on.
one.
We can anyway
yeah,
go publicly see the list, but yeah.
yeah. So supposedly, so yeah, Nikhil Chinapa has just followed me. So I just dropped him a
What?
message. Yeah,
The
just
Nikhil
dropped him a,
Chinapa.
yeah, Nikhil Chinapa just followed me. So I
He's a
Can
just,
you
big
ask for
Formula
passes,
One
please?
fan.
yeah,
Nikhil, if you're
exactly.
listening, we can give you like a VIP access to all of our Inside Line events. Hell, we could have you playing music over there as well. That'll be so cool, right? Us talking about Formula One and then celebrating it with a party at the end with your music. That'll be perfect.
But there's a continuation to this stat, which forgot to mention within that stat that's being circulated. The thing is, Hamilton, after 2012, exactly 2 years later, he won a title with his new team after there was a massive regulation change. And 2 years from now, we have a massive regulation change happening as well.
And he beat a teammate who was already at the team for far longer than he
Exactly.
was.
Yes. So it's kind of struck a chord with a lot of the Hamilton fans who are probably looking out for some sort of, good omen for the next couple of years, and everyone's loved it. I've not received one bad comment, which is very strange from a stat. Otherwise, I'm hearing all sorts of stuff. But yeah, today I kind of feel good.
But this is what Formula One actually needs, because Formula One has very interesting stats on the broadcast, but when it comes to their social media, which is where a lot of consumption of the sport happens, these are those kind of stats that really stand out. So, dear F1, if you're listening, we know the man. We all know the man. We all consume his stats, officially or stolen or whatever. But on to other things. Since now I've proven why I called you all jokers, I still stand by that.
I
But
think they know. I think they know him too, Kunal. I think they know him too.
who doesn't? But okay. Uh,
But but I-
on to
but but I should mention one more thing about McLaren, because I kind of knew they will win the constructors car championship. But then what they've achieved is something that's very, very rare. So they won the title with two drivers who are not current or former drivers champions, and that's just the third time that's happened
Oh
throughout F1
yeah.
history, throughout the 75 years of the sport. It's happened just thrice. The first time it happened was way back in 1958, the first year of the constructors championship. So that time it was Sterling Moss, someone who's widely regarded as the best Formula One driver, of the greatest Formula One driver to not win a world championship. So he was with Tony Brooks and Stuart Lewis Evans. And then back in 1983 with Patrick Tombe and Reni Anu, 40 years later is when finally we see a team winning a title without having the drivers championship in their roster. This might change next year though.
hmm,
Wow. That's crazy. But when we are speaking of successful teams, drivers, partnerships, we have to talk about the greatest partnership in Formula One history. Firstly, let's put that question in there. I don't think it's worth debating. But guys, I genuinely feel Lewis and Mercedes, what they've achieved, the numbers that they've achieved as a team together, the people that they've beat together. I mean, I know I might be biased here because of Lewis being my generation of driver and Michael being your generation of driver, Kunal. But statistically, and in terms of influence, and I'm talking about influence off the track as well, because both of them have done so many incredible things for the wider sport as well. Inclusivity, greater racial diversity as well. Everything that Lewis and Mercedes have achieved together, in my opinion, I don't see any greater driver team partnership in Formula One history. Even though it might have ended on a sour note and it felt like Lewis was just relieved to let this whole chapter end, but what they've achieved is, I think, something that we will talk about for decades to come.
oh yeah, absolutely. I think no driver and team partnership has delivered so much on track and, like you said, off track. Somil, the way Mercedes has absorbed Lewis's talent, helped him, made him shine. Also, at the same time, they embraced what he stood for: the silver
Hmm.
arrows turning black, them standing up for all his beliefs. I would say political beliefs, but that's not really what would define how he stood up for so many causes, whether it's inclusivity, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's promoting talent, whether it's saving the world as well. Like some of the things about being plant based and sustainable and so on. And I think I loved Toto Wolff's send off message. Of course, I'm sure it was scripted. I'm sure they sort of, Lewis himself, practiced his message, rehearsed it, as did Toto. But Toto's ending statement, you'll always be a part of the family. If we can't win, we want to see you win, right? And I
That got
thought
me
that,
tearful, honestly.
yeah, that was incredible, for all the words about sabotage, which I don't think has happened really, but it's so difficult to out scream or outwit the algorithms to tell people that there is no sabotage there. And even the overtake he pulled off on George. I mean, George, out of respect, wouldn't have gone wheel to wheel for all we know. But Lewis also had a tire advantage. But all in all, just what an emotional moment, that. And you realize, hey, he's not leaving Formula One. He's just going to another team. I can't imagine if Formula One can handle a Lewis Hamilton retirement.
No.
We've of course just about handled a Vettel and a Raikkonen retirement, but a Lewis Hamilton retirement. And I have to say, he did his donuts. Big, big, big credit to Mercedes for letting him do donuts. And yes, we've seen the race director's notes where they were telling where Lewis will do donuts and park up and so on. And a lot of people were saying, "Hey, why can't the others do donuts? Why not Max Verstappen? Why not, Leclerc or whoever wanted to do donuts?" The truth is, it's not that the FIA has a say in who can do donuts or not. They don't. The teams have a say. And why do they have a say? Because in a couple of days, actually, not even a couple of days, tomorrow is when the postseason tests start. The young drivers will go in there, the tire tests will go in there. And the teams want to use the same engines. They don't want to be installing new engines. And when you run donuts, you're actually risking damage to those engines. And that's why a couple of years ago, Mick Schumacher was told to not do donuts, because as a customer team, if you have to
Oh.
put in a new Ferrari engine, okay, it's just going to cost you more money, especially from a driver you've not earned too many points from, for example. So next time this happens, again, no sabotage for Lewis or for the drivers who didn't do a donut. But hey, I'd love to see the donuts. And I actually miss Joe Guan Yu doing it.
Come on. That's rude of you. Like
Even I
the
didn't
guy
catch it.
the
I
guy
didn't catch it.
has the guy has three moments in the entire year and you miss one of them. Ah, okay.
We all know those three moments. But yeah, even I missed it, unfortunately.
But we will talk about Joe later. Trust me, we will talk about Joe Guani later because I don't think Formula One is done with him yet. There is a bigger overarching story to it. But back to Lewis, back to Ferrari. I want to talk a little bit more about what Fred Vasseur has said. And this could be very interesting, right? We all know Lewis is the greatest, but we also have seen so many moments where Lewis can throw his toys in the pram. Let's put it that way. That's how the Dutch would describe it, where he can just be like, okay, it's not working, let it be. I don't want to be here anymore. Let's focus on what's next. And he himself has admitted he's not really the best at handling his emotions. He's only human. That can happen. But what Fred Vasseur has come to the media and said, I think really well sums up Lewis Hamilton, Fred's understanding of Lewis, and why I feel that partnership might just work out better than we all expected to. He said, and the interviewer asked Fred about Lewis Hamilton leaving the team of his life. Fred Vasseur said, "The team of his life, we will judge it in 2 years. Thank you. It didn't always go well. He's someone quite sensitive who needs to be surrounded, supported, loved. He could have had the feeling that it was not always the case this season. After, I think, when he smelled the blood, or at least the smell of Russell in front today, he put everything back and he showed that he's quick. I was never worried. I know what he has in mind. I think for us, it will be an added value in addition. And Sundaram, I think there is no better way of summing up Lewis Hamilton. When he smells blood, he has a ninth gear that nobody else has. But when things are not working, probably he dips to a gear three or gear two. That when a George Russell would be on gear six. But if Ferrari can give him that package, and if Fred Vasseur can give him the love that Ferrari have failed to give to drivers like Alain Prost in the past, I think we'll be in a very good state for 2025.
And I don't know if I really agree with Fred's words over here because, see, first of all, about the team of his life story, sometimes when you bring up certain drivers' names, they're almost synonymous to a certain team. You don't think about Michael Schumacher and the Benetton days. You think about Michael Schumacher and Ferrari. Yes, he won his first two titles with Benetton, but you always think about his time with Ferrari, and it's going to be the same with Lewis. Even if he wins two titles, three titles more with Ferrari, I think what made him Lewis, and
No.
no,
Did
it's
you win a
what.
title with Ferrari?
No, come
It's
on.
for
I know a lot of people are kind of happy, and a lot of his fans are happy that he's moving away from Mercedes. But the team that made him a legend or took him to that iconic status is always going to be Mercedes. No drivers won six titles with the team. Okay, and he's become Lewis Hamilton because of Mercedes, and vice versa. Mercedes has reached that stature because of Lewis. And that's why I say, even if he goes to Ferrari, sure, and I really wish that he has a lot of success. And Ferrari has been that sort of team which hasn't handled its champions well. We've seen that with Vettel, we've seen that with Alonso, we've seen that with several others as well. Kimi Raikkonen to some extent. I don't know if Ferrari, if it's changed under Fred's time, but he's also right in that way that he really needs to be surrounded. And when you leave, whenever a team has a driver moving out, obviously there is not that sort of same relationship that you would obviously have with the driver who's more staying with you for a longer period of time. You do have to hide certain things from the driver, especially about your next year's plans, and you're not a part of the closer group of people who know what next year's car is going to be like. So in that case, Hamilton might have felt so. And sure, there's lots of rumors around sabotage and everything, but for me, Mercedes and Hamilton will always be synonymous. Not even McLaren, probably not even Ferrari.
I I have to agree with that, or let's put it this way: we will test that scenario out in a couple of years. I love this transition photo of Lewis, where he's gone from silver arrows to the red outfit, so to say. But at the moment, it's Lewis's Mercedes, Mercedes is Lewis, and it's difficult to think otherwise. And all we should do is just celebrate that one of the greatest drivers is going to have the opportunity that not all the greats have had before, and not many drivers may have here on as well. I mean, Max Verstappen may never drive a Ferrari or a Mercedes before he calls his time in Formula One and ends his era. But I
Hmm.
definitely think Hamilton Mercedes is that unmatched era, just given their dominance, their competitiveness, and like I said, embracing each other for more than just what they brought to the world of motorsport.
I was tearing up at the end when Bono said, Lewis, it's hammer time. And the way Lewis was performing at the end, closing up a 13-second gap within 10 odd laps, that I know he had a tire advantage. I know George didn't really fight a lot with him. Whatever. We all enjoyed it for one last time, and that was honestly incredible. But something tells me he was very relieved to go, because looking at his face, looking at his expressions after the race, after it was all done, the donuts felt obligatory. The pictures felt obligatory. You got a feeling that it was an end for the sake of there being an end. And I wouldn't be surprised if 5, 10 years down the line, Lewis comes back and said, I wasn't feeling 100% that day, or my mind wasn't 100% focused on Mercedes or the end on that very day. Maybe because it's coming for such a long time that you zone yourself out mentally and already start looking in the future. But whatever it is, we have to take that moment to celebrate this incredible partnership. And now next year, George Russell will be leading the team that's been the most successful one in the last 10 odd years. I am so excited. I am so excited.
You know,
I,
you know,
I, I
there's
Go on, go on.
there's this one further point I actually wanted to highlight about Lewis's partnership, because I think the two major partnerships that we've seen in Formula One, of course, Lewis Mercedes and Michael Ferrari. These two partnerships came at a time when no one expected it to flourish.
Yeah.
When Michael moved to Ferrari, they had not won the title in what, 15, 16 years. They had no indicators, or they had nothing to prove that they had what it takes to be a world championship team. They had lots of internal rivalries and internal politics, not rivalries, internal politics happening at the time. And it really took someone like a Ross Brown and a Michael Schumacher to bring all of those different sides together and make them work together as one. So Michael took the plunge back then to make Ferrari great again, and Lewis took the plunge to go to a Mercedes when everyone publicly humiliated him and called him out for probably never winning a race again. If you look at Verstappen going to Red Bull, obviously that he was part of the driver academy, but Red Bull had won a title barely 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Ayrton Senna, when he moved to McLaren when he moved to McLaren from the Lotus days, McLaren had won the title a couple of years ago. So you always want to go to the best team at that point, or in recent history, to further your career. But when Michael and Lewis's careers reach the top, they actually went with teams which had no indication that they would rule the world. So that's in that case also why I have to speak so highly about this partnership. And this
Yeah.
is why again this will still sit a little higher for me than any other partnership. Ferrari's done well this year, and I know Lewis is going to be very positive about that. And but that's why for me that relationship is going to be very, very big.
You were saying, Kunal.
No, I mean, I like the point that there was no guarantee of success. He said, we dreamed alone and we made it happen. And we made it happen together. And, to me, like he said, it's history now. All his races have been powered by Mercedes. There's a lot of love that's not going anywhere. And I'd love to see how it coexists, his love for Mercedes as a brand, but treating them as a rival as well. And yesterday, one of the things that I also noticed that there were two drivers who staged a very strong recovery drive. Both of them are going to race for Ferrari next year. First was Leclerc, he went from 19th to
Yes.
3rd, and then 16th to 4th for Lewis Hamilton. And I think we have to spend time discussing that opening lap of Leclerc because I literally made a note of who all he went by because I think it was in 6 corners that he made up 4 positions or what I can't remember. So he
Yes.
made he made the start. Yuki Tsunoda was stalled and he just went out. And there was I think Albon and Doohan didn't really care, and then Piastri and Verstappen had spun around, and I think Joe Guan Yu somewhere got stuck there. I actually saw this replay a few times, and I think he made, like I said, in those 6 corners, he made 11 places up because there was also Perez, Magnussen, maybe Bottas and Sunoda as one. There's Lawson,
Yeah.
and they were all up there. And he was driving like I've actually never seen. I've never seen such a strong recovery drive by Ferrari. They aided him with strategy. He aided their strategy by pulling off a brilliant drive. And again, fan bases who are new to the sport say, guess what? How bad is Carlos? He started up there and he finished second, and this guy started at the last row and finished third. Well, the truth is, that's how Formula One works. There
Mm.
is no higher than second if the driver ahead is ahead of you, and then you're just controlling your race. So both drivers, I think, drove a phenomenal race to sort of give Ferrari the best shot at trying to get that constructors championship, which of course didn't come. But under Frederick Vasseur, the recovery that Ferrari's had has been pretty phenomenal.
Can I tell you something? There's also a stat to support this. Sorry, Samuel. The thing is, in the first half of the season, the team with the most points was Red Bull. And in the second half of the season, the team with the most points was Ferrari. And neither of those teams won the constructors title.
That's crazy. Have you put this out yet?
Not yet. I have a lot of stats to put out. I have a lot of stats
Do
to
it
put out
now, dude.
in
Do
due
it
time.
now. That's a crazy one. Which again further gives you evidence as to why McLaren were deserving champions. Good everywhere. I think that car was just phenomenal. Speaking of car, we should talk about car loss because
Of course.
that's another farewell we need to talk about. There are a lot of farewells we still have to get to before we talk about just how good Pierre Gasly was, and I really want to talk about that. But Carlos Sainz, if this is the end, I'd say what a fitting performance it was. Not P1, because we know that rarely happens with Carlos, but a solid, well structured, well deserved P2. That can be the legacy of Carlos Sainz in a way, which I hate to say as a fan because I'd love to see him number one more often, but just very solid. And I, I mean, I like the fact that he's showing belief in Williams already. In his post race interview, he said thank you to Ferrari and he said, I believe in Williams and the project and I cannot wait to get it going. That immediately after the journey is done. Like a Ferrari journey is so emotional to get out of, right? There's so much of love, support. There's so many people wishing well for you. There's so many people creating plaques for you and inviting you to their restaurant so that you can inaugurate a plaque that has your name on it. That happened with Carlos Sainz. And just that emotional baggage of leaving Ferrari, the fact that he was mature enough to drop it right there and say, okay, my focus is now on Williams immediately because he goes there tomorrow. I mean, this guy is laser focused. He deserves more, but I'm so excited to see. And I'd say he was the right driver for the right time for Ferrari, Kunal, because I don't think anyone else could have come in and done as good of a job as he did. And by as good of a job, I don't mean score as many points or be always P1. Just calmness, solidity, a very smart brain, and someone who the team can depend on. And whenever they called upon him, this guy did score a lot of points. I don't remember him making so many individual driver mistakes. He was the perfect teammate to Leclerc, I'd say.
And I liked his clarity of thought because you can see that he's really had to work hard on himself with the cards that he's been dealt. He said, I was actually a replacement for Seb, and that was actually never planned. So I was just filling in a seat till Ferrari figured who they wanted next and what they wanted. And he said, Leclerc's always been a part of this, so they will continue with him. And then when a legend like Lewis comes, who can say no to it? So
Yeah.
very matter of factly, which again, very few drivers would have been able to deal with, where they are just like, okay, this is how the dice rolls, and I am the one who loses out. So I'd love to see how he makes a recovery for Williams, but I get a feeling that he might just be lapped up by a bigger team in 2026 or even 2027, just because of what he's shown he can do at Ferrari against Leclerc. Because let's remember, right now there's this big pool of young drivers. Even though I would want all of them to succeed, there's a good chance some of them may or may
Yeah.
not succeed as much. And there could be that pull again of having more experienced drivers come back into the teams as well. So Formula One's always a circle. Like I remember a very famous quote from Esteban Ocon, where he said, "I will drive for the slowest team on the grid if I have to, because that's my best chance of being seen rather than taking a year's break from Formula One."
You're right.
This is this is when he said when he was forced out of Racing Point, when the Stroll suddenly came in and said, "Oops, but I got to give my son a seat. So thank you very much."
Sorry, we're not going there today. We're not touching up on Aston Martin in that second seat today. So
No,
I will weep.
we have better things to do.
No, but coming back to Carlos, you know what? Carlos Sainz has actually just stepped out on track today on a filming day. It's actually there today. So he's actually gone out in a Williams car already, and now he's actually driven for the top three constructors in Formula One history:
You're
Ferrari,
right.
McLaren. McLaren now is second most in terms of constructors titles, and also Williams. Actually, someone sent me a text last night asking, "Has Williams won 9 titles?" So yeah, I think they're a recent Formula One fan, but Williams has been one of the most formidable teams in F1 history. But I get the emotion why he's so emotional leaving Ferrari, but he also probably understands this is going to be a while since he's at the very front. There's a lot of belief in the project, but he knows it's a long project. And like Kunal said, he can show that he has experience on his side, and he's a steady driver. Going P2 yesterday without making any mistakes is also a very big thing, considering it at least got them close to the championship with McLaren. So I hope this is not the end of the road for Carlos Sainz. He definitely deserves to be in the upper tier of cars and drivers that are there in Formula One, and he's what, all of 30, if I'm not wrong. So there's definitely a lot left in the tank for Carlos. Is this a Spaniard thing? Is this a Spaniard thing? For some reason, they're at the right team but at the wrong time.
I swear. And when they leave, the team gets better.
I just remembered. McLaren is the first team to win the title after Fernando Alonso has left the team.
No. You're
Yeah.
right, though. You're
He's
right,
left
though.
Renault. He's left Renault. They've never won. He left McLaren. They just won yesterday. He left Ferrari. They never won again.
Soon enough. Hey, Carlos Sainz is fulfilling that prophecy because now that he's left
Yeah,
Ferrari, there's a good chance that they might end up winning the championship with.
exactly.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And Carlos Sainz must be wondering, oh my God, what if I had just stayed on in McLaren all these years? Could I have been the one winning?
Would
You're
McLaren
right.
have kept him? Would McLaren have kept him
I
Uh,
for
think so,
that
because
long?
he had the measure of Lando Norris at that time.
hmm. And they
At
looked
that time,
For
he
sad to
four
was
let him
more
the
go.
quicker
years,
driver.
with
They
four
looked
more
sad to let
years,
him go.
yeah.
I think
Could have,
he
would
was
have, should have.
also the right driver at the right time for McLaren. I believe. I mean, As much as we have to credit Andreas Stella, Zach Brown, Lando Norris, and everyone around it, and Oscar Piastri too, I think Carlos Sainz also played a big part in that recovery because you needed someone like him to transition from 2018 to 2022, where they eventually did start their progression forward. And each and every one of those podiums that he got for the team in that meantime, it meant the world to them. You could see how happy they were. You could see how much they believed in Carlos and how much he believed in that project as well. Worked out so well. But okay, guys, now I have to give you a choice. I've been leading the topics all the while. We have two choices. We either say congratulations, Pierre Gasly first, or we say goodbye to a lot of people. And we want to say a proper goodbye to a lot of people because there are some few really fun things there. Who
We're
chooses
not
this
we're
one?
not we're not touching on Max Verstappen at all, is it?
Can you
I
believe
mean,
that?
he's done all the touching already, so there's not much that needs to be touched upon.
But okay, I'll bring in two stats before we move to the next team. I know Kunal
Sure.
is a fan of numerology, and Max Verstappen has 437 points this season, 437. You rearrange that, Lando Norris has 374 points this season. Okay, and the difference between the both is 63. Whose racing number is that? George Russell.
Aha. Aha.
A little tribute, a little nod to his good mate from the recent races, George Russell. But something that I also kind of looked into yesterday, Max Verstappen has had a tough year. He spent 10 races outside the podium spots. And this is something I'm actually verifying. Apart from Sebastian Vettel in 2012, no driver has spent so many races off the podium and actually won the championship. Sure, if you go back further back into the 2000s, further earlier, a lot of the races, seasons were a lot shorter, 17 races and the likes. But I really have to look at the percentage and find out where does he rank. But he spent 10 of the 24 races off the podium and he still won it by 60 plus points. So if that summarizes Max Verstappen's season for you, yeah, I hope you get it.
Mm. One of the greatest Formula One seasons by a driver ever. Honestly,
Yeah.
like it's. I just wish there was no bullying and pushing people off the track or crashing into them. And I get a feeling, unfortunately, we might get to see more because Red Bull dominance is not guaranteed anymore, which means we
Uh, uh,
properly
you know
get to
what?
see.
They have more time in the wind tunnel next year.
They do.
They can use that for 2025 and they can use it for 2026. This might just be a small blip
Hey, wait,
in.
but does that work for 26 though? Because
Yeah,
They can
shouldn't
use
it
it.
be offset for everyone for 2026, right? Equal. I mean, technically, ideally, in my
it
in my
will
mind.
be offset next year in June. Okay, but the regulation opens up from 1st of January, which means everyone can run double programs. Everyone will run double programs, 25 and 26. But onto this, you said great season for Max. Also a great swing of performances for Max. He's either had world championship drives, like we saw several times, Brazil being the most recent, my recency bias kicking in, or that move yesterday on PS3. I mean, Oscar PS3 said, "Wow, that's a world champions move," or whatever he said. But it's unbelievable how Max can swing from one to the other. Where he'll put in the most stunning drives, and they're like, "Max, but what did you do wheel to wheel again?" There is no in between, and I think this is something. If 2025 is as close, which it seems like it's going to be, this is something he will have to clean up at his end, because what happened yesterday, he could have been up there in the top three positions, maybe fourth as well, just before Lewis or someone, but he just ended up losing more points. It's just that he lost points at a time of a season when he didn't really need them. Red Bull couldn't have done with more points either way,
Yeah.
but when it is tight, when all the battles are it's all set to play for, moves like these will cost him and Red Bull Racing points in the championship. But my favorite Max move from the race weekend was when George Russell and Toto Wolff pounced onto him. George says, "I have an 8-year-old nephew," and whatever, he's swearing. And then Toto Wolff said, "I have a 7-year-old son who's karting, who watches all the press conferences." And then guess what Max says? "I have a newborn baby on the way." I think that was his most amazing move. Congratulations to Max and Kelly. A little Verstappen PK on the way. Can you imagine the genes that kid is going to be born with? Two world champions. and several intertwined DNA of motorsport talent in that little champion.
Yeah,
There's
let's focus on
there's
the racing side with the kid though. The let's not focus on the other side, but the racing, yeah, they're going to be good.
there's something about Nelson Piquet and Max Verstappen. Both of them were brilliant drivers, especially when they were not starting from pole position. So I think that's one of the genes that the child is going to get, regardless if they're going to be a racing driver or not. But yeah,
But on to Pierre Gasly. Let's he of course got that P6 for Alpine. I would say almost single-handedly, given the performances he's put in the last few races. But crucially, he
single-handedly.
yeah, I mean, don't you think?
Well, that's what Oliver Oaks would like you to believe.
Everyone's forgetting Esteban Ocon.
No, I'm not forgetting Ocon. What I mean is the last few races, Alpine has forgotten Ocon has existed. And he's got the better car. He's got all the upgrades. He's got the A spec car, as you'd call it. He's delivered with that A spec in qualifying and in the races. He's outscored the Haas's. He's gotten MP6 in the championship, and to me that's credible. Also, I think with his finish in Abu Dhabi, one of my most disappointing stats was that Pierre Gasly overtook Nico Hulkenberg for P10 in the Drivers' Championship. And this
Ah,
is
yes.
Hulkenberg, who's probably spent 85-90% of the season in P10, suddenly lost it by 1 point in the last race in Abu Dhabi. Not that Hulkenberg would have gotten too much of a bonus or whatever or the likes, but there we go. Pierre Gasly is up to P10, one position up.
And the Brazil, man, what a comedy. What an outlier, right? They got 35 points. Alpine before that had a collection of 1 point, 4 points, 4 points, 1 point, something like that. And then in Brazil, they get 35. And I genuinely don't think we've ever seen an outlier like that in Formula One, where just one race can get you an extra $24 million. That's around 17% of your budget in one race. It's been a wacky last couple of races for Alpine because we haven't touched upon this, but in Las Vegas, the reason why Pierre Gasly's engine exploded is because it was too freaky fast. They got in the slipstream of Yuki Tsunoda. The engine went to a rev limit where it didn't ever go. It was not designed to go there as well, and because of that, it just ended up breaking. And that to me is phenomenal. So you get 35 points in Brazil, the engine tapping out in Las Vegas, Gasly putting it in P3 in Abu Dhabi, defending against George Russell for most of the race. And then when Leclerc comes to pass Pierre Gasly, he gets passed in one go. And Russell might have been thinking, bloody hell, why couldn't I have done that? Couldn't I have done that? But Gasly was all throughout phenomenal. And I was questioning big time, as we all were, why would Alpine let go of Esteban Ocon when they had just have a 5 point gap to Haas in the last race of the season? Wouldn't you want something or someone more proven to just secure the championship? I think they believed in Gasly and his qualifying abilities far too much. And for that, I'd say fair play. This guy has really smashed it out of the park.
No, Pierre Gasly has been very good, especially in the last um, 6, 8 races. He's been qualifying well. He's been putting the car in the right places and also getting points for the team. And I've just been looking at the points over the last 5 races. The last 5 races, which okay, let's talk about the last 4 races from Brazil. Max Verstappen has the most points, 75. Pierre Gasly has 33, half of
No.
that. How much does Sergio Perez have? 2. But Pierre Gasly has been exceptional over these last 4 races. P3 on DNF, like you said, in Las Vegas, and then a P5 and a P7. So he's really worked out to give them that P6 position and what 20 million odd more in the bank. So yeah.
Yeah, they'll need that for the compensation they'll have to pay for all the team principals they've sacked, right? So it's a fair
All the
fair amount
severance
to
packages.
earn. Wow.
But the one driver I'd love to speak about is Kevin Magnussen. He's had the most beautiful moments with his daughter on the grid, his daughter helping him get ready. And he said, she won't remember any of it. There we go. Yeah, that picture is so
It's
beautiful. She
so
won't remember
cute.
any of it, but I'm going to remember this moment for the rest of my life. And He's not going to be in Formula One. He's racing with BMW, from literally next couple of weeks onwards as well. Great end to a season and a career for for Kevin Magnussen as well. And Haas, I'm sure they're also kicking themselves over, that result. And they've said, that Brazil is where we lost it. Alpine outscored everyone in that race, and then boom, we've just been playing catch up. It just matters when your bogey or when your trump card comes at which part of the game, and where you stand at that time when you get the chance to play a trump card.
Did Behrman cost him that race? Because he was running in the points, remember?
Lots of digging, but they're just happy they're not the ones that is last, I would say. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, what a year. But more than Magnussen leaving, I'm more sad about this pairing coming to an end. Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg. A partnership that began in acrimony, with one of them offering the other person to offer them oral stimulation. It's now ended with both of them being two of the most incredible midfield teammates, I think, in Formula One. Like, given the context, right? Both of them returnees to Formula One, both of them in their second leg in the sport. Nico Hulkenberg, arguably in his 2.5th leg in Formula One as well.
Or more. How
Or
many how
more.
many returns
Yeah,
has he made to
he's been
Formula
dropped
One?
so many times. He's been dropped multiple times. 2010 initially, and then 11 actually, and then after that, the point being, they aren't meant to be here. They aren't meant to be teammates. They aren't meant to be in this team. And this team isn't meant to be this high up, given the way it operates with four different bases and so many different suppliers and people managing this whole outfit. And what they've done collectively, completely different personalities in terms of what they do on track. Magnussen, the one bringing the fire, Hulkenberg, the one bringing the ice to it. They weren't friends. Probably still aren't. But the way this relationship has blossomed and how they've contributed to Haas's success, two mature drivers putting aside all their problems to work towards a common goal for a team that desperately needs something like that. And given where Haas was with their drivers just a few years ago, I'd say they will really have pictures of Hulkenberg and Magnussen stuck up on their walls and say, man, these drivers were the best for us. Because genuinely, I don't think anyone could have done a better job given the circumstances. Okay, it helps that it would have helped if Magnussen would have broken a few less front wings, but still, what an unbelievable partnership it's been.
It would have helped even without all the penalty points that he racked up, and the race ban as well. But one of the good things that Gunther Steiner did was bring these two drivers together, and before leaving Formula One. And I also kind of realized that Nico Hülkenberg has scored in 12 different rounds this season, and that's the most by a Haas driver in their history. Kevin Magnussen had done 11 rounds back in 2018, but definitely going to miss the both of them going forward
No, okay. So you're basically saying that because Hulkenberg's
together.
gone to Sauber. Okay.
Together.
There's a good chance we might miss Hulkenberg a lot if he's just around P19, P20. His
But
bank
no,
account won't miss
but
anything.
even for Sauber, I'm actually very excited to see because they have two good drivers. I mean, Nico Hülkenberg has been one of the highlight drivers of the season, but they also have Gabriel Bortoleto in the other seat. So rookie champion in F3, rookie champion in F2. So he's a very young and exciting talent. So at least they have the driver base covered. Now they only need to give them a good car that matches their potential.
Kunal, a word on Kevin Magnussen. We've seen this guy grow so much, right? 2014, fresh faced young driver, coming in after becoming a champion in the lower formula. Everyone was excited. He was McLaren's next big thing. And we all know how that worked out. Then there was the fiery side of him at Renault. And then the anger and aggression he carried into Haas because he had a point to prove. Nobody believed in him at that point. And then what he's done, then him getting sacked for being too hot headed, coming back after becoming a dad. I think it's amazing how we get to see a life go full circle just by being a Formula One fan. We've seen a person's story evolve so much in the last 10 years, and how incredible is it that we get to witness all of this?
And the sheer honesty with which we get to witness this, I think that's also the beautiful part. I think drivers who've left the sport and then have actually come back with a better understanding of where the sport sits in their life. I think when you're young and you just get a chance in the sport, you're just it's a bubble. I've been in it long enough to know it's a bubble, and that bubble bursts at some point. And it's how you deal with that bubble bursting that really defines how healthy your relationship is with Formula One. And I think that's what stands out for Hulkenberg and for Magnussen both, that they are just in this space where they are content with what they can get from Formula One. They're enjoying it. They're there for racing cars. They know they'll never get a quickest car to win a championship, but they'll keep going, banking in all these midfield points, which are crucial for the team, for the business, and just just go and enjoy all the memories and see how long it lasts.
Reminds me of The Godfather or something, right? We are the professionals here. We don't do this for fun. We do this for a living. And that kind of stuff. Okay, last couple of minutes in the episode. We are going long. It deserves to be the case. I believe more than we chat about Zhou Guan Yu, I think we should chat a little bit about Franco Colapinto. Is this the end of the road, guys? Okay, one question. Let's not put it this way. Sundaram, if you were Christian Horner, because he seems to be the only person who has a say on Franco Colapinto's future now, would you pick him up?
No, I would pick a Yuki Tsunoda first, and then maybe a Liam Lawson, and then think between Isaac Hajar or a Franco Colapinto.
So, Hajar or Colapinto? Where are you going?
I would go with Colapinto then.
What about you, Kanal?
I think I would give Sunoda a chance. My concern with Sunoda is, and this is seemingly for the first time after retiring on the opening lap, Checo Perez admitted that he may not be there next year. He said we've got an agreement and we've got to find a solution that works for everyone, which
Hmm.
basically means the severance package that he would get for leaving Red Bull prematurely, etc., etc. But I think. The big question on Yuki Tsunoda is how strong is he mentally or not to be alongside Max Verstappen in a front-running car. And on one end there is speed, but if you don't have the mental toughness to extract the speed, then would you choose a driver, say like Liam Lawson, who's showing more mental strength? At least that's what the Red Bull team seems to be saying, and then give him more time to succeed. So it's interesting to see what they'll do. And I think Yuki largely getting all the attention from Red Bull is all down to Honda. Honda leaves at the end of next year. They become a works team with Aston Martin. So lots of commercial considerations, I think, that Red Bull's going to have in letting go of Perez and then hiring the next driver. And I think a lot of Colapinto interest is not just the speed and with which he's settled in, but the ability to attract those big ticket, from Argentina as well. So
Yeah.
we should know in the coming week, and we will definitely discuss this, on the podcast.
Yeah. If this is the end for Franco, though, he came in with a dream. He showed us all what he's capable of. And I think he should leave with his head held high. What he's achieved in these few races is incredible. Very quickly, though, very quickly, we need to touch upon Valtteri Bottas. And I don't think it's the end of us discussing Colapinto or Bottas. We should talk about them more in depth when we do our postseason review episode. Zhou Guan Yu, probably we should have a word about that. I don't think we're just done with him yet. I'll tell you why. Graham Loudon, the new team principal of Cadillac, he's the same person who manages Zhou Guan Yu. First couple of years for a manufacturer are sort of inconsequential, as we've seen Sauber do with Gabriel Bortoleto, right? They don't need to worry much. They can just give a young driver a shot and be like, let's figure it out. And as Flavio Briatore said in Alpine, it doesn't matter who the driver is until a team reaches a certain stature. So I think Cadillac might just experiment with Zhou. But Valtteri Bottas, let's not give him a proper farewell now. I think this guy deserves his own episode. But you have two fun stats about him, Sundaram.
Yeah, this is something I actually sent out to the Sauber team as well, hoping that they would use it. But Valtteri Bottas is the only driver to be a part of every single Grand Prix in the hybrid era. He's entered every race in the last 10 years. Although he did not start one race back in, was it Bahrain or Malaysia 2015, but he's been to all of the races. And the fact is, if you look at all the podiums in the hybrid era, you have Lewis Hamilton up top, you have Max Verstappen in second, and then sits in third comfortably Valtteri Bottas 67, ahead of Sebastian Vettel, ahead of Nico Rosberg, and ahead of Charles Leclerc. So he's going to be third on that list for a long, long time.
Is that a good note to end on? We've gone 1 hour, 4 minutes in. I think we should give more time to Bottas and Joe in our review episode because there's a lot we want to talk about them. But there's our regular day to catch up with as well. And my parents will probably come and shouting, saying, "Hey, dude, you have to do so and so things." Your work emails might come in Sundaram. And for you, Kunal, life in India might come back. So
Absolutely. Life in India, we've got an event to plan, 12th of January in Mumbai. More details on social media.
exactly. Stay tuned, everyone. We all are finally in the same city at the same time. So it's an incredible scenario, and we will bring a lot of fun Formula One content for you on ground and also virtually. But thank you for listening to all of this. There's another 1 hour episode coming for you, and then another one. We will keep on talking. The off season is where we get to really yap a lot, and we will use that opportunity fully. But this is not a sign off to 2024 because we will still have more content, we will still have more episodes. But for the racing season, thank you for following us all along. It's been such an incredible journey. So many of you have reached out, so many of you have shared your predictions, your thoughts, your opinions, your feelings, and we love all of it. In this episode, we couldn't take a lot because we had to dissect so many things, but keep sending them in. We want to know what you think of on the sport, and we should hopefully include all of that in our Parody Awards episode coming up. Okay, now I see Kunal putting his hand on his forehead. It's time to end. Thank you, guys. We'll see you in a bit.